one of the speaker you're asking your question to, and then we'll answer by cluster. Okay, thank you very much. So let's start. Okay, one. Yes.
Dying Catalan then in exile because of lèse majesté in Britain at the moment. Dan Zobsak talked about the lack of consensus in Thai society, and I think that's a very interesting point. Well, what I'd like to say is that the idea of a consensus in society is somewhat a myth, because if you look at Europe today, there is no consensus over austerity, support for the European Union, for workers' rights, for example, the struggle in France, or about peace and war. This lack of consensus actually reflects class interests, maybe even in a distorted way, and that's what's going on in Thailand. I think it's useful to look and see what makes the lack of consensus manageable in societies, and we can point to repression, demoralization of discontents, economic growth and rising living standards maybe can help this, but also in Europe after the Second World War, the rise of reformist social democracy and its acceptance by the ruling elite. Now, the Thai ruling elite have not accepted alternative political platforms. In the morning, I gave a talk in this same session, and I'm not going to go over that. You can read my paper in my blog, Up the Truth Thailand. But I argued that the King of Thailand is a weak reactionary puppet, that the problem with the Thai crisis is not really primarily about succession. But what is interesting, and this comes back to what Dan Somsak was saying, is that royal hegemony, which existed from the 1980s onwards, actually corresponds to the defeat and demoralization of the Communist Party in Thailand, which is actually an opposition group. Now, when you look at the Thai crisis today, there are a number of things that lead to a lack of consensus. The 1997 economic crisis that exposed the disjuncture between what was going on in society and the superstructure of political rule. The fact that people weren't enjoying the fruits of economic growth. And Thaksin's modernisation programme, including universal health care, which benefited ordinary workers and farmers. This is something that the Thai ruling class was opposed to, and this is what is causing the crisis. But the problem is that there is stalemate in Thailand at the moment because we don't have in Thailand strong movements like there were in Western Europe, the labour movement and so on, to force the ruling class to actually accept alternative political platforms. We had the Red Shirt movement, which is the biggest mass political movement in Thai history, but yet it had many weaknesses, which Dan Somsak has also talked about in the morning, including the fact that it wasn't totally independent of Thaksin and it wasn't linked to the labour movement. So I think that we need to actually move away from just looking at what the king and the monarchy are doing and actually look at the real roots of the crisis and the coup d'etat.
Thank you very much. So that was a comment. Yes.
I'm Dean. I'm a student in Paris. I would like to ask Ajahn Somsak or maybe Ajahn Pawin as well. My question is about the military. So Ajahn Somsak mentioned, as Ajahn Chai has talked about the consensus. I would like to ask why. I mean, there seems to be a certain consensus inside the military. We don't in this crisis we see. Ajahn Somsak talked elsewhere about polarization. The society is divided into two groups. But among the military itself, we don't seem to see that kind of conflict. Of course, we heard rumors, but among the red shirts, we call for Tahan Tangmo, or we talked about the counter coup d'etat. But in reality, it seems that the military seems to have some kind of unity. especially in this situation. I would like to ask Ajahn Somsak's explanation on this unity inside the military.
Thank you very much. Another question? Yeah.
I would like to ask Ajahn Somsak. He said that the elected politicians have only administrative power and they have to borrow royal identity. So the question is that who decide to lend royal identity to whom? And what is the consequence if they cannot borrow royal identity? So,
Thank you very much. A last question and then we'll answer. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Janyali Prasad, also outside in Thailand because of our experiment. I think one of the pictures that is missing here is this is also part of the incident that's confused the world about Thailand in the past decades. Is that actually the civil movement, civil society, NGO, trade unions are the one who are mobilized together with the loyalists to kick out electoral governments. And because the NGO and trade union, which is the biggest organized sector in Thailand, lost their track and decided that in order to eliminate popular capital governments is to join the force with the armies and the lawyer who use the monarchy as their symbols of the protest. And for the past decades, the NGO and trade unions of Thailand made the world silence because of the strong connections of the NGO and trade union to the national level, to the regional and to the globals. So we did hear the response from the unions, from Europe, from everywhere, and because of the international sector also silent, and it become the giving a gap of the driving force also from Thailand because I think in everywhere, in the kicking out the military coups or the fighting for democracies, you have the sector of the civil society who have long history of organizing, leading, the direction toward the democracy. But Thailand confused the world because the excuse they make is that because they are too weak to fight the popular government in the parliament, so they have to use the extra force. And I think that has silenced the international community for so long. But the 2014 military coup, this is breaking. But what the problem that we are still a bit of deadlock right now is that there is no forgiveness or asking for forgiveness of the civil society and the NGOs and the trade union in Thailand still some tolerance to all of this economic crisis, falling direct investment falling 97%. So it's quite interesting period right now that I think after the pass away of the monarchy, maybe the directions of analysis or indications of what the future Thailand would be might be more clearly. But at the moment everyone is hold their position. Party governments or parties hold their position. The civil society is just wait and see. Trade unions are still playing the old safe games. And I think the mass mobilization was not organized at the moment.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll start answering. So maybe I can start if you might want to start.
Okay, I think there's three questions. The first one belongs to Ajahn Jai. I must say I'm a little bit surprised that Ajahn Jai cited example of the situation in the UK or Europe that there is no consensus. Of course there is. The issue of the split in the UK, say for example the Brexit, or even this is one of my favorite. In the last election of the presidential election, Obama won lesser margin than Ting Lak won in her election. That's means in the US there is split also, almost in the middle. Obama won the vote, the popular vote, just I think just a few millions in 60 million, no, about 200 million voters or something like that. But is there a consensus? Of course there is. When we talk about consensus, it has many different levels. Say for example, we have no consensus about how to analyze this something, right? But in the UK, in the US, and in most of Western countries now today, I don't see revolution. I don't see revolutionary situation. Why? Because no matter how they split opinion on this issue, they have consensus on what? First, how to come to power by election. They have consensus on the role of the parliament, of the court. They have consensus on the basic law or the constitution. These are consensus that I'm talking about. Or maybe Ajahn Chai might maybe a little bit more sympathetic if I change my language a little bit into more Marxian language. What I'm suggesting is this Gramscian idea that for a rule, for a society, for a class to rule, for a social class to rule, there has to be hegemony. What is hegemony? Gramsci defined the term basically as consent, as the rule by acceptance of the rule acceptance of those who rule by on this basic issue, on the structure of the state. This is what I'm talking about. So if I just change I could easily change my language that nowadays for almost 10 years there's no hegemony in the country. There used to be the guy that I put this is the hegemony, this is the consensus. The second question that didn't ask about, this is a very good one. If you look at my chart here, what I'm suggesting is that there's a lot of attempted coup, failed coup in the 1980s. I remember vividly during Pen era, almost monthly, there's somebody would state a coup, General Atik Kamangye would move against, and he tried several times actually, and this failed coup attempt three times actually don't account for all those attempted coup or rumor or movement coup. The answer is it quite simple that this is a new development that I'm talking about. Up to the 1990, when the when the regime was defeated in the uprising of 1992, even among the army itself, it's have this fragmentation. It's not that absolute. Looking back, it's not that absolute as maybe we at the time, we activists at the time thought, but they were. This is the new development that after the 1990, there's almost none of the fragmentation that exists before. I think this is a part of the new development of the new Thai state. I almost it might it might sound counterintuitively to say, as I say, that I think if we look at Thailand, say, quite maybe funny question, how when the Thai state, modern Thai state happened, I think I would locate it in 1990. I would locate here that this is for the first time after the revolution of 1932 that the Thai state had developed into a unified state without the fragmentation among different bands of or different components of the state. And the last question about this borrow ideology, I see it this way. I don't think I use the word borrow ideology. When we talk about ideology, we are not talking about something that people decide or people act it or like consciously even. It a lot of different things that make up what we call ideology, even in the sense of here we are talking here. This is part of something that we suggested, part of the total system of idea, right? And it's not something that somebody decide to borrow or somebody decide to give it. In the case of the state, in the case of the component of the state, I think what I'm trying to say is that this new layer, social layer that emerged at the elected politician, because they grew up in this society for so long, and maybe I'm not sure that I have no really made explanation about this also. Why this non-Western bourgeoisie, if you call it, couldn't really develop their own system of thought, their own ideology, unlike what we saw in the classic case of bourgeois revolution in the West. So they just took over what was there, that is the loyalist ideology, which had been for quite a long time, and it developed in a specific form of Bhumiponism that I'm talking about.
Anyone want to?
Well, to respond to Adin's question regarding the fragmentation within the military, I think I might have a different idea from Ajahn Somsak. In fact, I think we had argued a bit over the page of Facebook. I think for Ajahn Somsak, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you tend to see the military, more or less unified at this point in time. And for Ajahn Somsak, should there be conflict or fragmentation between the military, it has to be obvious, right? Or it has to be a kind of attempted coup. I think I see it differently. I mean, relatively peace doesn't mean there's no conflict, between different factions within the military. And I would say that the generational shift happening right now within the military, from, I would say also the old guards into the Queen's Guard. I mean, that could also signify, possible future, conflict down the road. When the new faction within the military happen to be emerging faction of Prayut Chan-o-cha, start to craft its own network with the new royal regime. That, with the interest that might not align with the interest of the old guard, you know what I mean? So I mean, I'm saying this kind of thing, that perhaps there might be some kind of conflict along the way, and this again has something to do with the generational shift within the military. To respond to the civil society organization, and I would also extend to cover the middle class, the Thai middle class as well. I mean, I just happened to finish a research on this topic. Well, what I can say is that, we cannot really count on the civil society organization in Thailand, also the Thai middle class, to be defender of democracy, because their adherence to democratic principle is only conditional, according to their own interest. If their own interest would be protected, under the pretext of democracy, then they would support democracy. If certain democratic government do not offer a kind of interest to the middle class, then they would happily come out to reject elected democratic government. And so I mean, this has something to do with the conditional, right? Their view of democracy is conditional depending on the interest, and even also the idea of them to try to push Thai society or Thai political landscape to be inclusive or exclusive, which would include the lower ranks in society or would exclude them. It all depends on their interest as well. If they would perceive that the lower ranks of society would not pose a threat to their power position, then they at one point in time in history, you would also see certain middle class coming out to also support. I mean, I wouldn't want to use the term of grassroots, but in a lower class. For example, the path toward the making of the Constitution of 1997, that is a good example of the middle class think broadly in terms of including certain classes into groups that would earn interest as well. That's all.
You want to add something? More question? About 3-4 questions? Yes.
My name is Klaus, Syrian Thai Denmark. This conference today is held in Paris obvious reasons, it couldn't be in Thailand. But you were also speaking French and English and not speaking in Thai. And as we noticed, there are several Fulan people here today, for whatever reason they have chosen to come. We've had several views upon what is the real problem, what is the real cause of the conflict. Maybe there are different views, or maybe it's just reflecting that there are different stratas, different layers in this conflict, which is very, very complicated. One Thai professor tried to explain to me what it was all about, and he made a mind map, the size of the wall down there, of all the organizations, and all the opinions, and all the things going on. Now, I have a rather simplistic view on the conflict as well. I would nonetheless ask the panel to count upon it. That the Thai conflict is also basically an anti-fascist struggle, and that anyone, Thai or non-Thai, should choose a side in this conflict. Thank you.
Other questions?
ขอถามได้ไหมคะคืออยากถามอาจารย์สมศักดิ์ว่าอาจารย์มีความคิดเห็นอย่างไรกับการที่ในบทเรียนเนี่ยเรามักจะเห็นพระบรมราชาเป็นคำพูดของในหลวงค่ะเขาจะตัดโค้ดมาในหนังสือเรียนเรื่องที่หนึ่งแล้วก็เรื่องที่สองคือเรื่องการให้ร้องเพลงค่ะมันอาจารย์จะเห็นว่ายุคแรกๆจะมีเพลงพระราชนิพนธ์ก่อนถูกไหมคะแล้วก็มีเพลงที่สันติรุ่นเพลงเขาร้องแล้วหลังจากนั้นปี42ช่วงนั้นเขาจะมีเพลงพวก
เบิร์ดธงชัย
ใช่ค่ะพวกเบิร์ดธงชัยภูมิแผ่นดินแล้วก็อยากให้อาจารย์แสดงความคิดเห็นว่าพวกนี้มันเกี่ยวข้องกับแมสโมนาคีมากน้อยแค่ไหน
Okay, another question?
My name is Wolfram Schaffer. I come from Vienna and I'm teaching political science there. So my question is directed to Jan Pierwood. And the question will be, how do you envision the role of a constitutional court in a democratic Thailand? But to explain a little bit more what I mean is, there's no consensus in the literature whether we are talking about a politicization of the court or a judicialization of politics. Right? And in the morning we have been discussing about democracy, and we shouldn't, come with a kind of fixed idea of democracy and then test whether Thailand really adheres to this model. But then an activist, Pierre Bousset, said we should more focus on rights, on basic rights, human rights, and political rights. But if we don't focus on the system but more on the rights, then we would need someone to defend the rights, and we would need maybe an even more important constitutional court. And this, in the present situation, is not really what we would like to see. So, how do you see? Is there any positive vision of how you see the role of the constitutional court in something like a democratic regime?
Thank you. One last question? Yes? Okay.
My name is Chu from I'm the first year master student from the University of Amsterdam. This question is for Ajahn Somsak and Ajahn Pawin. Could you please give some prediction on the upcoming King Vajiralongkorn period? What would be an evolution of Thai government? Would it still a military government like today, or they would give us back the democracy by some consensus and become a constitutional monarchy like UK or Japan? Or King Vajiralongkorn, who not so popular as his father, would be overthrown by military. So the government will fully govern by military without monarchy. Or our greatest hope, the Republic of Thailand.
Okay, so who wants to start? Do you want to start?
Permettez-moi de parler français, peut-être.
Okay.
Oui, c'est une question intéressante. À mon avis, origine de l'intervention politique du juge, son origine est le discours du roi le 25 avril 2006. Vous pouvez remarquer auparavant le juge en Thaïlande, c'est le juge silencieux, c'est pas le juge qui décide dans la vie politique. Même si nous avons promulgué la constitution de 1997, il y avait la Cour constitutionnelle, il y avait la Cour administrative, mais tous les deux sont restreints. Mais après le discours du roi de 25 avril 2006, tout le coup, c'est incroyable à mon avis. C'est la Cour constitutionnelle, le président de la Cour constitutionnelle, le président de la Cour suprême, c'est le président de la Cour suprême, trois cours, le président de trois cours peut avoir ensemble, peut faire le meeting pour délibérer que oui, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour que follow le discours du roi du 25 avril 2006. Oui, et c'est très incroyable. C'est pas possible pour que autre pays, c'est pourquoi je vous dis que c'est l'origine. Et puis, par rapport aux droits fondamentaux, il y a beaucoup de arrêts, il y a des certains nombres pas mal, les arrêts que le juge administratif et le juge constitutionnel protègent les droits fondamentaux des citoyens. Mais quand le juge administratif ou quand le juge constitutionnel se retrouve le problème qui concerne la monarchie, le mode de protection des droits fondamentaux, c'est étreint tout de suite, immédiatement. Je vais vous montrer un exemple. La Cour constitutionnelle a décidé que la loi qui prévoit la qualification des candidats pour être le juge est inconstitutionnelle parce qu'il est interdit de handicap pour que le handicap pour être le candidat pour devenir le juge. Ou par exemple, le juge constitutionnel aussi a décidé que la loi qui oblige la femme changer le nom de famille comme le nom de famille de son mari est inconstitutionnel. C'est très avancé à mon avis. Mais quand le juge constitutionnel se retrouve le problème concernant la monarchie, le mode avancé, le juge activiste, le juge progressif, c'est fini. Par exemple, le juge constitutionnel a décidé que l'article 112 de crime de lèse-majesté est constitutionnel. Même si la reine, comme on disait, la peine de crime de lèse-majesté, il n'est pas proportionnel par rapport les actes. C'est la peine de prison 300 jusqu'à 100 ans. Et il est serré dans le type de sécurité de l'État, même si le roi c'est pas l'État, parce qu'on dit que c'est la monarchie constitutionnelle, c'est pas monarchie absolue, mais cet article est inséré dans le type de sécurité d'État. Oui, par exemple. Bon, peut-être c'est la conclusion. Je peux conclure que c'est le problème idéologie du juge en Thaïlande, notamment, oui, bien sûr, il y a longtemps, mais on peut voir précisément après le discours du roi de 2006. le juge a idéologie royaliste. C'est l'idéologie royaliste, nationaliste qui occupe dans sa tête. Ça veut dire qu'il peut protéger, il peut progresser, il est actif jusqu'à la fin, jusqu'à le bord de monarchie. Mais nous sommes dans l'état de droit aujourd'hui. C'est le discours dominant dans le monde. Le juge applique, exerce son pouvoir au nom de l'état de droit. L'état de droit. C'est contre-pouvoir, c'est protection des droits fondamentaux, c'est garantie, gardien de la Constitution. Mais à l'intérieur, en profondément, c'est, comment on dit, le juge veut éliminer des élus ennemis de l'État, ou le juge veut éliminer les opposants du régime au nom de l'état de droit. Et il est légitime aussi, parce que comme le pays étranger voit que oui, c'est le juge qui décide, c'est la loi, c'est votre système de droit, c'est votre système juridique, c'est fini. Le juge dit, même si en Thaïlande c'est le discours, on dit Turakan Tiwat qui occupe dans la société thaï aujourd'hui. Quand le juge a décidé, tout le monde doit respecter. Tout le monde doit respecter. Et puis tout le monde dit, oui, il faut accepter. Même si vous n'êtes pas d'accord, mais il faut respecter quand même. Parce que c'est le juge. En plus, il y a le discours en Thaïlande aussi, c'est le juge qui décide au nom du roi. Le juge qui décide au nom du roi en Thaïlande. C'est le juge qui décide au nom du roi. C'est pourquoi que je pense que c'est le problème. Le dernier remarque, vous pouvez remarquer, après la révolution 1932 en Thaïlande, toutes les institutions politiques est réformée et adaptée, sauf que l'institution judiciaire, sauf que les juges. Je crois que peut-être il y a tous les juges, presque tous les juges en Thaïlande pensent qu'ils travaillent à la part de la monarchie, service pour roi, c'est pas service pour le peuple. C'est le problème de mentalité aussi. Et dans la formation de juriste, la formation de juge, il n'y a pas le cours pour la démocratie, c'est toujours le cours de technique. Technique de droit, il faut mémoriser bien la jurisprudence, il faut interpréter, c'est le technique, c'est pas idéologie, c'est pas la démocratie. Oui, c'est pourquoi je dis que oui, il y a deux phases pour le juge thaï. Première phase, le juge peut protéger les droits. Deuxième phase, le juge peut éliminer les opposants de l'État au nom de l'État de droit aussi.
Can I ask the first question that our friend asked in Thai? Answer in Thai, should I?
Well, no, in English. Do you understand English?
Okay. About the textbook and the song, like I have no data about the textbook. It's something that probably, if I have time or other interested, but I can talk a little bit about this song because I'm quite interested. If you look at the evolution of this loyalism through song, for a long time it's just loyally composed song เพลงพระราชนิพนธ์ but what happened in the 1980s, actually 1990 onward, that is privately produced, and as I said, that this is one of the aspects that I suggest about the mass monarchy. The artist and songwriter belong to this or that music company began to produce their own kind of loyalist song. But what is interesting for me is the way they presented it. I remember once I'm not actually an expert on Thai song. Sorry, not usually listen to Thai song and a lot of this I don't know it, but I don't know that, but a lot of you might know better. I remember once what is called the program is the reality show contestant, and then after they have their winner and they have the group AS or something like that, and they produce AF, right? And they produce a song, Eulogize the King. And there's a lot of this. And what is interesting, they produce it in a very, what should I say, very sexy way. I mean, young singer, this sort of thing. When I was young, or when in the 1960s or 80s, it would be a shock to Thai society, right? And there also, I think I once listened to a rock band play this kind of song for the king, this sort of thing. So all this is part of the phenomenon that try to describe or to rely under the concept of mass monarchy. It's something I think it's quite new, and it's something that we should be interested in. About the question of prediction, I think some audience asked in the seminar this morning. I just would like to draw attention that I didn't have time to. In my chart here, you would notice that when my basic suggestion, which is quite in direct conflict with Ajahn Chai analysis, that I think from the 1990 onward, the military have lost the status what I call the independent political agent. It's just a matter of it become it subject under the leadership of the Parisian and or either the monarchy. And after the split, I put this green inside the blue one. Just try to signify that after the 2006 the coup d'etat and after the conflict started up to this very moment, what we saw either the first coup group, what we call Commercial, right, and this second one, the Prayut group. Basically, it's just acting on behalf of the monarchy, even though the monarch is dying. This is it. Not no matter that the king is dying, he have to have order every day. And this morning we argue about this, about how you understand the power of the king. And I ask you that it's not the same kind of power of a CEO that you have to have your full faculty and order. You do this, you do that. No, this is the problem of the organization of the state. The organization of the monarchy is the whole organization, even though the CEO himself is dying. And the command of this organization vis-a-vis other component of the state. And this is explained why since 2006 the two crew group, even now up to today, basically they are acting on behalf of the monarchy. But the question, right, this is the very important question which I don't think that anybody can really answer. Will there be the split inside this camp, this monarchy military camp, because of Vajiralongkorn, because his very erratic behavior? I think I heard that inside the military, especially the lower rank, there's some resentment toward as I heard that especially the Air Force, because he involved a lot in he had to do his activity flying this sort of thing, and his aircraft, I understand the Air Force takes responsible for maintenance, this sort of thing. And so I heard that there's a lot of resentment, especially, but I don't know, I'm not sure that anybody can predict that far. My friend here, Andrew, believe that the Crown Prince, after he become king, he wouldn't behave. I mean, The one thing that everybody should notice that this erratic behavior of his still confined within the circle of the palace. He just recently punished some of the very high-ranking officer in the royal household below, a very close confidant of King Bhumibol. This is this is more than anything else confirmed that King Bhumibol already unconscious. Because this guy, if King Bhumibol conscious, nobody can dare to touch him. The fact that Vajiralongkorn find this man and put him into a military training, humiliate him, this more than anything else confirmed that King Bhumibol already unconscious. So would this kind of erratic behavior, and also if for somebody who not only know the way he do it, the way he did it not legally at all. He issued an order which he didn't have the right to do, because this guy belonged to the office of the prime minister. The only person who can order this guy to go to military training, this sort of thing, is the prime minister, or otherwise it has to be a wish of King Bhumibol himself. But legally speaking, it has to be an order from office of the prime minister. But because this guy in the system of bureaucracy belonged there, but the crown didn't care. He just ordered and signed his name on it. The problem is the question which I don't think that we can really answer, whether this kind of erratic behavior and doesn't care less about the rule, doesn't care less about the work, even doesn't care less about social decorum, that you can wear a drop top in front of 20, whether it would still confine to this palace circle once he become king. This is a question that I don't know. I tend to be pessimistic by nature, which in this case mean that I think it's still possible that he would behave at least outside this palace circle. My friend Andrew, okay. So in short, I can't really answer it, but there is there possibility that all this erratic behavior would cause a split in this camp? Well, that always that possibility, but I'm not sure. I don't like pin my hope on this possibility. Maybe I just answer a friend about the fascism a little bit. I actually, before when I prepare seminar today, I actually thought quite foolishly that I would preface the whole seminar with discussion of three methodological issues, which is I have been in fact intensely concerned with this issue, this methodological philosophical issue. For example, how could we validate what we propose? How say for example my analysis, Ajahn Pawin analysis, Jenny analysis, Ajahn Jai analysis, how would we validate or justify that mine is the truth, other is not? For example, this is a very philosophical. I'm not going to detail, but one of the philosophical issue that I at first I thought to discuss it, but it's not possible for in the context of a short seminar, is the issue of there's a debate at the turn of the last century initiated by the group of philosophers that somebody called it historicism, especially a group of neo-Kantian. But basically they suggest is that each society, each culture, each thing has a uniqueness to it, and you cannot create some sort of theory or some sort of generalization. Say for example fascism. So I must say that I tend to agree with this tendency. So to answer your question, I must say we might find the same thing, but should we describe this fascism? I would tend to disagree. I mean, and this there's the role of question of theory also about democratic change, about this. For example, when I read the article about this thing, about theory of what struck me quite strongly is the issue that about this role of theory. I mean, I'm not saying that the problem is too complicated to go into, but I'm not saying that we can escape theory. We cannot, but it depends on how we understand what theory means. Thank you.
Ideal types. Okay.
Yeah, ideal type. Yeah.
Otherwise, we
I'm going to just pick only one question about the future of Thailand with Rama 10. What should we expect Rama 10? Whether he would involve in the Thai government in the future, whether that he would become, his reign would become a constitutional monarchy, like the UK. Oh my God! Had the monarchy been really is constitutional, it had no been. Would he become popular like his father? Remotely. Will the military continue to support him? What about the concept of republicanism? Because this could be a PhD thesis. Okay, this is what I will say briefly, and for the interest of time. I think the fact that the reign of King Bhumibol has become so successful, in fact, it had become too successful. That in itself, in fact, allow us to answer that Rama the 10 reign would already become a failure, just because you compared it with what had happened with Rama the 9. Working on the concept of neo-royalism studied by Thongchai, that the Bhumibol has become so successful because he had been sacred, he has been popular, and he has been democratic. Ironically, he has been democratic, but I need time to elaborate, but I don't have time to say it here. But looking at these three concepts of sacred, popular, and democratic, that Vajralongkorn would not be able to achieve. So in many ways, you would also predict that, no matter what happened, Vajralongkorn would never become like Bhumibol. And as Chanwit said, all these qualities, will not be transferable. What belong to Bhumibol belong to Bhumibol will never belong to Vajralongkorn. It is both easy and difficult to try to understand Vajralongkorn as well. And I think this is important to try to understand Vajralongkorn, because if you can understand him, then you might be able to predict what will happen. It is very easy, because of his lifestyle. You see it, what you see is what you get. It is also very difficult because, frankly speaking, you do really know what Vajralongkorn is thinking about the future of the monarchy. We ask ourselves, do we know what he thinks? I don't think so. Do we know what would be his political vision in the future? No, because there is no material to study, right? He has not really given any, significant political speech. No, there's nothing to study. I think because of that, it is also very difficult to try to understand Vajralongkorn too. So, I would give a conclusion, just like Ajahn Somsak said, it's very difficult to see what would be next after Bhumibol. Just one last thing though, the idea of republicanism, many years ago, if you ask me this question, I would say no, I do not really, I do not buy into this concept, this idea of republicanism, because it had not been well cultivated, inside the Thai political discourse. But you ask me today, I think there is a possibility. I'm not saying that there is a high possibility, but there is one option should the monarchy fail in the future. Thank you.
Just a little bit about this question. It's not directly about the question that asked it, but and this is, if we talk about it, right take wrong, but I just want to remark this and related to what I said. When we compare the success of Bhumibol and the likely unsuccess of Vajralongkorn, I just would like to suggest that if you look at the actual history, the so-called success of Bhumibol is not largely of his own doing, actually. After the 6 Tula incident, after the massacre of 6 October, his popularity or his standing among this Sino-Thai middle class Bangkok is very low, at the lowest time. So what we see is just this change that I'm talking about in the 1980s. In other words, this Sino-Thai bourgeoisie construct Bhumipol. In large part, the success of Bhumipol is the construction of this social group that I'm talking about. They adopt Bhumipol as their identity, adopt him as their substitute for nationalism. It's like in the past in other countries when you created nationalism or nation. This is what I'm talking about. This Sino-Thai bourgeoisie created Bhumipol in this sense. So the feeling that he's so successful and his son is not, itself is something quite new. Okay.
Là, je peux vous répondre sur la question sur la démocratique, la monarchie constitutionnelle. Je ne peux pas précisément pour la Thaïlande parce que je veux rentrer en Thaïlande. Donc, peut-être je vais montrer l'histoire de chaque pays dans le monde, l'histoire politique contemporaine, deux régimes, la monarchie constitutionnelle et la république. La monarchie constitutionnelle.
Sorry, but we can't really hear, so if you can, maybe if you want to just have a chat, just go outside. Thank you.
La monarchie constitutionnelle peut exister seulement si la monarchie doit être réformée. Tout le pays, c'est comme ça. Mais si la monarchie ne peut pas être réformée, ne peut pas être adaptée avec la vie démocratique, oui, c'est la République. Oui, c'est ça la réponse. C'est pourquoi je vous ai dit que la réponse, c'est pas nous qui décide, peut-être c'est la monarchie qui décide. Si elle peut adapter, oui, c'est la monarchie constitutionnelle, comme Angleterre. Mais si la monarchie ne peut pas bien adapter dans la vie démocratique, oui, c'est la République. C'est l'histoire qui nous dit depuis longtemps.
All right, so thank you very much, everyone, for coming.